Well, here we are. The day after a Canelo fight, we said the undercard was going to be fire. Well, don't be sad, because 2 out of 3 ain't bad. But let's get to the main event first. Going 12 rounds, disappointing me and many others, but Canelo Alvarez getting a wide decision victory over Jermell Charlo. In a fight, when it was first announced, I thought this was stupid. Started warming up to it, and then I remembered I still thought it was stupid, but the undercard was very, very well matched, so went with it. Charlo getting dropped in the 7th round, maybe picking up a couple of rounds here and there. Just kept in place by Canelo's power shots. Hands kept it home more often than not. He didn't do much there. And Steve, he said after the fight that he dared to be great, and I would argue no. You dared to sign a contract, but you didn't dare to be great. He looked a little flabby, I don't know. Well, I wasn't impressed with Charlo much whatsoever last night. I thought Canelo looked good, probably the best he's looked in about a year.
Yeah, it's interesting, Matty. You actually pick up on something I had written on my little pad of notes as well. There, actually, about Charlo's post-fight comments. He touched some of the modern sound bites, as you mentioned there. I was daring to be great, he said. A friend of the pod, Declan Graffin, picked up on that one as well. We now know that daring to be great means you accept the fight, and that's enough. You don't actually have to win it or even be competitive. As long as you accept the fight, you are daring to be great. And also, this is yet another Derek James fighter who went on to say, in fact, I think this is the first thing he said when Jim Gray put the mic in his face, that wasn't me in there. He said that straight after the bout, if you listen. Frank Martin also said that. Errol Spence, well, just he could hardly string a sentence together by the time he'd finished against Crawford, but he also said something as well, both after bad performances or defeats. So that must be the official party line from that gym at the moment, or there's no urgency whatsoever. I'm not really sure what Derek James is doing in the dressing room before fights. They must be burning incense candles or something, or playing whale music, because these fighters are coming out absolutely comatose, and it's showing in the ring as well. It was the weakest display of Charlo's career. I don't think he carried the weight very well. He looked slow and reluctant. He said again afterwards in the post fight that he came in at 173 pounds.
Well, as soon as I saw him come in at over 167 at the weigh-in, Steve, I'm like, is this guy stupid? The one thing that you definitely have in this fight is the speed advantage. Use it the most that you can. And he's got those 154-pound belts down there still, and you want to bring yourself that far up? I don't know. I would have rather seen him 162, 163, a little bit firmer in the stomach. That's just me.
Yeah. No, there seemed to be some confliction over that from what I was reading beforehand. He wanted to come in heavier. Derek James' advice was to come in lighter, as you say, for speed, which I would have thought so as well. It reeked of a man showing up for a payday, knowing that he had nothing to lose and he could go back down again. If Charlo was going to have a chance, there were a number of things that he had to do or avoid doing in order to have success, I thought. So one of them was backing up onto the ropes. None of that, please. We saw against Castano what happened. The jab had to come out nice and strong and firm. He was neglecting the jab or only throwing one jab at a time. He was circling constantly, moving out of range. Every time Canelo threw a flurry of shots, Charlo's instincts were just to avoid them and leap in and grab hold of him. I don't know whether he had a plan or not. That said, Canelo played a big part in it as well. The body shots were thudding, especially the left hand. They were working for him. He was loading up at times. This is this new version of Canelo who tends to do that, hitting arms, gloves, pushing the glove in the face, hitting the hips and the pelvis, or whichever kind of region he could hit.
He's a low output, hard pressure fighter. His pressure isn't with his hands; it's with his feet. He is pretty damn good at cutting off the ring more often than not, too. I mean, he might not always be throwing punches, but he's usually in a place where he can if he wants to.
Yeah, well, you would think then, that case, that strategy, those tactics would lead him to gas later in fights. And that was when I thought that Charlo might come in, but there was nothing to deter Canelo from stepping inside. As I said, the jab, the power shots, the uppercut. He tried the uppercut a couple of times. I thought it might be there for Charlo. He couldn't land it. He was afraid to throw it. And Canelo dictated the range, as you said, Matty, the terms, when and where they were going to fight. Unless you have the Floyd type of accuracy and precision against the green version of Canelo, you've got to outwork him. You've got to outbusy him. We saw Bivol do that. We've seen other fighters do that at times. Charlo was not active enough for that approach. And afterwards, he was calling out Terence Crawford and all. It was the most animated I've seen him all night, calling out Crawford. He's setting himself up for another fall, trying to motivate the crowd and all. He'd get absolutely blasted. His power didn't carry at all. Nothing he landed all night bothered Canelo. He was never the biggest puncher, I don't think, at 154. If you remember at 154 against the likes of Harris and Castano, most of Charlo's joy came from catching opponents with flush shots that they didn't see coming, which is a skill in itself and down to good timing. But Canelo wasn't present for those kind of shots. He wasn't leaving himself open. So Charlo was throwing these kind of keep me off, fly squatter shots. He didn't want to open up for that reason. He would have got countered and hurt. And also for Canelo, just before I forget my train of thought, he's got 2 fights left now, as far as I'm aware, on this Showtime deal. This fight was a waste of time. We learnt absolutely nothing at all. Hopefully, he's going to fight Benavidez next because people are calling for that. And Canelo is the kind of guy, Matty, who reacts to fan pressure. And the pressure's mounting on him now to fight Benavidez, I think. And once the Mexicans start saying, this is the fight we want to see, you'd think it would be in Canelo's interest to fight Benavidez sooner rather than later. Because the way he waited out Golovkin, I was thinking about this earlier, he aged him off and then picked him off when Golovkin was near 40 years old. But Benavidez is only conceivably getting stronger unless you factor in the struggles to make 168.
That's what I'm thinking. I think it's beneficial for him to push that fight as long as he can. So if this is a 3-fight deal, I'd be looking at September next year if I was Canelo. I mean, that little extra bit of time, I think it matters in this case, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering about that because I was thinking, well, Golovkin, it's the age. Benavidez is only going to get stronger unless the weight is cutting into him. So we're assuming now Andrade's going to fight Benavidez, the winner of that. Hopefully, we'll fight Canelo. If Benavidez fought Canelo and Cinco de Mayo, that would be absolutely outstanding. But Jim Gray pretty much threw that out. Canelo agreed that it's going to be the 5th of May next time he's going to fight, which is a bit depressing, really. We're going to have to wait another 7 months to see him fight again. And then it might be a dud opponent. We just don't know. And I wonder, just finally, Matty, sorry, before I let Andy in, if Jermell's pitiful display might have hopefully put the dampeners on a Jermall fight next from a selling perspective, because I thought out the two, I was warming to the fact that Jermell probably had a better chance of springing the upset. If you're going to put Jermall in there now, I don't think he's got any chance, so might be a bit of a hard sell, that one.
No, I mean, it could very well be a hard sell. I think what's kind of funny is Charlo thinking he's also just going to walk into a Crawford fight too. Crawford kind of laughing at that prospect afterwards. He was looking at the winner of this fight. I don't know if he gets it or not, but I think Crawford would at least give a good showing. I'm not saying, win, lose, or draw, whatever might happen on that one, but I actually think he would try. But Andy, not to skip too far down, but I know you're kind of getting a little bit in yourself right now as you're watching on the side here. You got Charlo, who had a size and reach advantage over Canelo, and on the undercard you also had Mario Barrios, who had a size and reach advantage over an opponent. And I'll tell you what, man, the way that Barrios used that stick, that's how you control distance as the taller fighter. You know where that threshold is, and when the opponent's head comes across it, you snap that jab and you snap it hard. You don't do this pussy pawn shit with it because they're going to walk right through you. And Canelo had nothing to worry about. There was no snap to anything that Charlo was doing. I think those two fights provided a good contrast on how you fight as a big man, do's and don'ts.
Yeah, you're right there, mate. I mean, I've actually got the Barrios Ugas fight on just now, so I haven't been able to catch up with the entire card yet. But obviously, dropping Ugas on a great jab as well in the second round just goes to show that if Charlo had just basically committed to it a little bit, it might have been a wee bit different. But at the same time, firstly, I'll just mention the DAZN broadcast, which I watched on. Actually, I missed the total of the third round and half of the fourth because it cut out. Same happened in the Ugas fight here. I missed the third round in that as well. So I don't know. You mentioned there, for example, you gave Charlo maybe 2 rounds. So I don't know what rounds you gave him. I don't know if it was a third round because I've missed it. So absolute shitfest there. You got Donald McRae on Twitter complaining about it as well. The fight itself was complete trash. Charlo felt the power early doors, in my opinion. And Charlo just went right into his shell. And Steve mentioned that he circled that ring the best part of the entire night. He knew if he opened up, he was getting touched up and he was going to get stopped eventually. I mean, he was taking at least 1 or 2 heavy flush shots per round at one point. Now you seen it on the kind of slow motion replays. Those were big shots, the uppercuts, the left hooks, the right hands. He had nothing. He'd done nothing. Okay, maybe he had a couple of digs here and there and that, but it was just nothing, mate. first round is nothing as well. A lot of movement. There wasn't really a lot of output. You probably give it to Canelo for maybe pushing it in the kind of latter half of the first round. Starts more aggressive around about second, and Charlo's probably. I think he's around about the fifth round, possibly. I've maybe marked up here that he's probably landing something more meaningful for the first time. It was kind of like a potential combo. He didn't do much. He was, Canelo was never worried. He was just not worried about what was coming back, and Charlo was completely shitting his pants. 100%, in my opinion. He was worried about the speed and the counter of Canelo, and plus the power of those counter punches and that as well. Taking the knee, obviously he got badly rattled there. I mean, that was a great two right hands. I think it was a right hand and a right uppercut that Canelo landed in the seventh round that forced him to take that knee. So again, as I say, I just think he's tasted the power early doors. Then you've got him getting dropped there in the seventh round, and he's just decided that I'm going to have to try and survive here. Canelo, as I say, wasn't bothered, but Charlo threw at him. And if Charlo, as I say, if he attempted to win, Canelo would have got him, stopped him pretty brutally. So in the end, as a spectacle, awful, didn't deliver, and Charlo, okay, stepped up in weight, tried, I suppose, but again, as I say, he's come up there too far. He knows himself, landing those punches at 154 is completely different to landing on a guy who is like a legit middleweight, super middleweight at this point in his career. And as I say, Canelo's a stocky guy, teak tough, can take a shot, and again, it proved, as I say, he had nothing to worry about. One thing I picked up in the broadcast, and I forget who it was on the DAZN one, saying that Charlo's sticking and moving. As you mentioned there, Charlo wasn't even sticking, man. He wasn't even putting that jab out there properly. And that was basically kind of trying to keep the distance, trying to keep out of harm's way as for long as possible, then tie up when he had to.
He was pawing and jogging.
Yeah, even when he had a chance to try and unload on some shots, that he wasn't really fully committal. And some of those shots maybe scuffing Canelo's guard or maybe the top of his head or whatever, and that nothing. Absolutely nothing did he kind of step into. Again, it's just, I suppose the best thing to say here really is Canelo's turned the only line in the Charlos into Jermell, into basically a cub. Jermell's is the non-line of the family, and that's what fucking Canelo did to Jermell there last night. Actually, turned him into his brother. Turned him into, like he didn't want to fight, didn't want to taste it anymore, didn't want it. So I agree with the situation with regards to Benavidez. I entirely agree. Canelo's got to try and kick that can down the road, and I think it will be a third fight to deal with that as well. Probably this time next year he fights Benavidez. Who he fights the interim period, that I do not know. But it's, again, as I said last night, that was just awful.
Yeah, it is generally awful. I tell you, there's Steve, I just man, there's something fucking wrong with the Charlo brothers. That's the basic of it. Like, they stay out of the ring for a long time. They're always out screwing around. They've got problems with each other. I think everybody remembers that video before the Spence Crawford fight between the two women, and they thought one was involved with Crawford. No, that was one of the Charlo's wives fighting the other Charlo's girlfriend. And so you look at it like, and you're worried about Canelo, saying, we're not going to see him until May of next year. Well, we haven't seen Jermell Charlo in the ring since June of 2021.
Good. I don't want to see them.
In that time, Canelo has fought Plant, Bivol, Golovkin, Ryder, and Charlo. He's had 5 fights in that time, and he fought, a month before it. So basically, in that same fight, in that same period, Maul has fought 1 fight, and Canelo has fought a half dozen.
Did Charlo know he had a hand problem, though, didn't he?
That was Jermell.
He's got
He's
got mental health problems, and the WBC is siding with him in his fight against whatever mental health.
He's fighting with his missus, isn't he? Isn't that the problem? And
That's
custody of the children.
So is that a divorce and all that? Like,
yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah, and he's chose a bad woman, and it's a shame. So you got one holding the belt hostage there. You wonder how long it's going to be until Mel goes back and fights at 154 again. I wouldn't doubt if we don't see him for another year, probably.
Oh, easily.
And the WBO has now said that Zoo is full champion, so that fight with Mendoza is going to be, for an actual belt. So I guess, Steve, the question is: do you think Jermell's going to go ahead and try to reunify the division down there? Do you think maybe they will be able to swing the Crawford fight? What's next for this guy? I feel like he's going to be going off the edge of a cliff now. He kind of made that big money, and I just don't see the desire in him or his brother.
Yeah. I don't see him. He talked about 154. I'd say he'd probably be looking for a catch weight against Crawford, or maybe going to middleweight or something like that. I don't think it'd be in his interests to go back down and try and defend the belts or win them back if they've been split by that point. As you said, with all the money and things he's achieved and whatever, I don't think he'd want to do that. He'd be looking for these kind of fights, the Canelo fight, which he's already had, obviously the Crawford fight, etc. And because of the inactivity, which is rife within the PBC, as I've spoken about over recent years, they just don't fight often enough. So he could come back conceivably in 18 months' time and fight Crawford, and then come back and drop the belts in the meantime. As long as they drop the belts, that's the main thing. You mentioned about Jermell. If Jermell was off doing whatever he's doing and his belt was back in circulation and people were able to fight for it, then that'd be fine. Let him go off and do what he wants to do with the wife and sort all that out. But the fact that they're holding the belt hostage in the meantime is the problem for me. They can have the carnival fights, they can fight whenever they want or not fight whenever they want, but don't hold the rest of the division hostage. And if the WBC or any other sanctioning bodies are complicit in that, that's when I have an issue. I'll not go into this because I know it's a black hole. I'm just saying about Fury fighting Ngannou, which obviously now turns out might not be an issue with the Usyk news. But if you want to go off and have carnival fights, that's fine. But let everybody else do the proper fighting while you're at it. And that's the same with the Charlo brothers. But just closing off your point, Matty, absolutely. Jermell, I don't know. I just can't see him. Why would he fight the likes of Zhu? I never thought he fancied that fight. I'm not saying he would have lost to Zhu, but once he hit that cliff and hit that peak, and then you've got the money, the Canelo money come in, and the chance of fighting guys like Crawford, it's hard to get up for people like Zhu, who's hungry and young, and where Charlo was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. It's hard to get up for those fights. So I think when beating Zhu, people go, yeah, whatever, you've just beaten Tim Zhu. We didn't know who he was anyway. He's only an up-and-comer. But you might have to go life and death against, a tough, hungry, young fighter. And why would Charlo bother doing that from his perspective? So, yeah, long way about. I don't know what they'll do. But one thing you said is correct. We'll not see them again for a while because it looks like the PBC is on Skid Row. Showtime's closing up. Someone in the chat said about maybe they're selling out their stars. Looked like Charlo, as I said before, was in for the payday last night. Good luck to him, but they're pulling the wool over everybody else's eyes in the process.
I've just put an article in the chat there, actually. Just seen something in boxing scene. They're talking about Jermell Charlo fighting fucking Benavidez in November.
Yeah, that's right. On the Andre other Benavidez card.
Benavidez card, aye.
How many weights is Jose Benavidez Jr. going to go up? What would that be at middleweight, would it, or something?
Because he was a welterweight, wasn't he?
Yeah, originally.
I was like, which Benavidez? No, Benavidez is fighting. He's going to fight twice on his own card. Oh no,
Jose.
the other Benavidez. So he started his career. He might have been 140 when he started, but he set in at 147, lost to Crawford, disappeared for a while, and then he fought Danny Garcia at 154.
Oh, he's up at middleweight now then.
The problem with him is and I think he got shot in his calf or something like that, so it didn't help, but he's just got like the slowest feet ever. It's just, not his brother, definitely. But anyways.
Remember Crawford fucked him up.
Well, yeah, took 12 rounds to do it, but he finally stopped.
He tortured him though.
Yeah,
a little bit.
They had the fight at the weigh-in, didn't they?
Jose was talking trash, man, before the fight and before the weigh-in, after the weigh-in. Crawford's like, all right, okay. He fucking Ali Ernie Terrelled him, by the way. That's what he done. Fucking carried him and beat the shit out of him.
He's lucky he didn't fucking Emil Griffith him.
Aye, true.
You got to be careful about keeping guys on the hook. The last time I really worried about a fighter being kept on the hook too long out of pure spite was Pascal against Kovalev.
That was quality, man. See when the camera actually panned. There's someone actually did an edit. I don't know if it was Ryan Dealer, actually, to be fair. Probably was. There was someone that edited the clip. So see when like Canelo, Kovalev actually landed those punches, and you got Pascal like staggering over the ring like he's just came out of the pub, and then the camera then edits or cuts right to the daughter crying, and it cuts back to Sergey Kovalev actually pointing to Pascal at the time, laughing like as if he's actually pointing at the daughter, starting laughing.
He was crying.
It was savage. Proper savage stuff, man. I think it even had like the Jaws music over the top of it and that. Eh? Oh, it was quality.
Oh, that's fucking cold, man. Yeah, that was just one of the meanest fucking fights I've ever seen in my life. There's all
Twice
these
as well. He fought him. He fought him twice.
Yeah,
Yep.
well, there were all these moments he had where he like could have taken him out, and then he just decided to step back, kind of let him get his bearings back, and then went back on the jab again. It was just
The proper
unnecessarily
definition
brutal.
of Rocky IV when he says, "I must break you." Aye, that's exactly what he done.
Here,
Oh.
Matty, just a quick one. Johnny there, just have to pick him up on this. He's questioning Rick Glazer's integrity. He says nobody other than Rick Glazer and some other Twitter no mark has reported about Showtime stopping, so I don't believe a word of it. Well, we are big Rick Glazer fans here for all the things he's done over the years in boxing. I think he deserves a bit more respect than that.
His job's integral to the sport, mate.
Absolutely.
Don't know what he does, mind you, but it's integral.
I worry a lot
It's
about
necessary.
Showtime. I worry a lot about Showtime boxing collapsing, and I think a lot of it falls onto the Al Heyman purses. I think even though the Showtime was able to get by for 7, 8, no, probably almost a decade after HBO boxing closed. But I think you almost needed one for the other. You need
Spare a
that
moment.
competition.
Spare a
so-
moment for Eddie though, Matty. I mean, Eddie actually, give him credit, he actually predicted this would happen. It's just taken 5 years to get there, mind you, but it still happened.
Well, and it's great that he predicted that they'll get there, but so you want to prove them right by paying Mikey Garcia $7 million to fight Sandor Martin?
This is also true, mate. This is also true. Then who else did you actually spunk money on? Canelo to fight, like say, Yildirim, for example. Don't know how many millions he got for that. 20 odd million possibly. Callum Smith, waste of time fight. Liam Smith, well, that was under Frank Warren actually, wasn't it? So, what else?
You fought Plant on there on the zone. They got him away from PBC for that fight, I think. But yeah, it's all potentially in shambles. But I don't know what's going on. Every time they think boxing is going to die, it keeps on persisting. In its crooked little fucked up way.
It's like COVID. It's always there.
Well, the thing is it's kind of boxing is kind of like the illicit drug trade. As long as people are able to make money off of it, it's always going to exist.
Yeah, and you get villains running in the background of that as well, So.
Yep, and then you got poor people like us who just want to get fucking high on a Saturday night. That's it. And they gotta fuck it up for us, sons of bitches. Speaking of fucking things up, although they didn't fuck up my parlay, I finally hit a 50-1. Shame I didn't put more money on it, but fuck it, we're back in the game, baby. The judges in Ramos versus Luben saw a totally different fight than the one that I watched, as I basically had kissed my money goodbye. Thank you, Steve. As I watched round by round go through, and then around the 9th, Ramos just kind of stopped. Jesus Ramos, you just kind of stopped, like kind of like De La Hoya Trinidad-y. Not as much running, but nonetheless. And scores get announced, and the last one is a 117-111. So I think, well, surely it's got to be for Ramos, because I thought it was 115-113.
I thought that too. Yeah.
At best. And then lo and behold, they announced the winner as Erickson Lubin of just a fucking daylight robbery. Good God. I think maybe based on his jab, if you're not a huge body punch scorer, which I was kind of thinking in my head, you never know. Because that was basically the difference in the punch stats. Lubin's jab was good. And maybe they snuck a couple of those early rounds to him. But I thought maybe at a push, the draw might have came into play. But Steve, I never thought there was any way in hell that Luben got those scores. But lo and fucking behold, he did.
Yeah, well, you were mentioning De La Hoya there. I don't think Ramos's movement was as egregious as De La Hoya's against Trinidad, but that was the fight that came to my mind as well, funnily enough. Just someone giving away those final rounds and making it close, or on some of the cards, he didn't even have to make it close. It did occur to me before the 10th round, whenever the Ramos call out, they were so relaxed. I was like, oh, this is great. Yeah, they're having a lovely time there. They were telling their man, you're boxing lovely, stay disciplined. And I thought to myself, This is boxing, man. You know what? This might be a little bit closer than we think. You just never know. And the way I look at it is, I was thinking to myself after the scores, is there something that I missed? Is there somebody out there who's thinking, of course, Lubin won the fight? Is this my problem? Because we go by the commentary, don't we? The commentary team, they're a very useful barometer. And there's three people all there, and maybe they're afraid to disagree with each other. And Steve Farhood thrown in a scorecard, which was only 116, 112 in the end. So it's only 8 rounds to 4. It's not completely out the realms of possibility that Lubin possibly could have got a draw, or winning the fight, you go in the 3-round swing by that point. But I thought to myself, Kevin Cunningham's reactions was a thing for me. They were very telling in the Lubin corner. He was pissed off the whole fight. He was increasingly irate as it went on at Lubin's kind of laissez-faire approach and his attitude. He had his fighter way behind. What are you doing? You're not throwing this in shots. You're letting this fight slip away from you round after round after round. And obviously he'll say afterwards, oh, I was only trying to pump him up, keep him motivated and all that. I always thought he was ahead. He knew his fighter was not winning that fight. You could tell by Cunningham. But the fact that Ramos stepped off and let him come into it, I don't know. Lubin did turn up the heat down the stretch from 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 4 rounds for you. You give him the first round, all of a sudden things start to tighten up a bit. Ramos afterwards, a bit like Charlo, took his defeat surprisingly well. Don't know whether he was smashing things up in the change rooms afterwards, but he was like, oh yeah, I'm going to learn from this. I hope he does. This could be the best thing that ever happens to Ramos, because we've seen this in the past, using his size and his jab, stepping off against guys, letting people see the distance out who maybe shouldn't have done. So I hope this makes him into more of a killer in the future, because he's definitely got a big future. He's a big unit. He puts his shots together nicely. I hope this puts the firework up his arse now to say, I cannot coast down the stretch, and his corner team as well. I've got to come out and finish off this fight. But as I said before, Kevin Cunningham's reactions told you all you needed to know. He damn well knew that Lubin wasn't winning that fight. And you could say as well, Matty, just occurred to me, okay, Ramos took his foot off the gas, but what was Lubin really doing in return? His jab was working well. But see, from round 2 till about 8, he wasn't landing a damn thing. And Ramos's body shots, as you said, backing him up, hitting him to the body. There was only one man forcing the fight. I don't know what the judges were seeing. You see it on the screen there, 117, 111. It's just bonkers. Get him in again. Lubin will probably say, I don't want the rematch. I want a shot. I'm a big player at 154. And fair play to Lubin. He's been a good fighter over the years, and he's always come and fought his heart out. So I don't really blame him for the judges' scorecards. But yeah, I'd say Ramos won the fight.
It was a little bit crazy just, looking at these, and you see that in the last 6 rounds of the fight, there were only 4 rounds given in total on, what would be 8 in a total of 18 scored rounds between the 3 judges that Ramos won on any of those cards. I mean, that's crazy. Like I thought it was, you could argue that Luben won 9 through 12. But like you get into like saying that, he definitely won 7 and 8. I think that's a little bit crazy. I thought the first probably went, you probably could give that to Lubin. So like I said, I thought, like pretty clear rounds, Ramos win about 115, 113 at the closest. But I don't know what the fuck these judges were watching. I mean, they must have really loved Lubin's jab. I mean, it was flashy, quick, sharp, but I mean, that's a little bit heavy scoring for that one weapon.
I thought, as they were reading out the scorecards, a bit like yourself, I was kind of thinking about the scores in a Ramos context. It was like Chris Migliori, 115, 113. I thought, that's a bit tight. Yeah, okay. John McKay, 116, 112. Yeah, okay, I could see that. 117, 111. Yeah, pretty much 9 rounds to 3. Doesn't really give Lubin much credit, but that's more like the fight. And then they all announced it in Lubin's favour. And I was like, okay then. And even Mauro Ranallo, it shut him up for about 5 or 6 seconds. So that was a feat in itself.
I will tell you, Steve, if you're looking for anything, like a little conspiracy theory on this one, I was because I had money on these fights. I was watching the odds kind of all week, seeing what the betting markets were doing, and Luben pretty much all week had stayed better than 3-1. He was got closer to about 7-2, more so at times. And in about the span of an hour or a half an hour before that first bell of their fight, he went down all the way to a 5-2, just a little over 5-2. All sorts of money went in on Luben late. Very interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
So anyhow, you never know what's going on. It is boxing. But let's get further down that undercard. Aforementioned Barrios versus Ugas fight. which Barrios coming into that one an underdog too, and slowly crept his way up to 2-1 underdog. And man, I had that feeling too, and we were right. There was something about Ugas with that inactivity coming off the Spence fight, the injury coming off the Spence fight, and the idea of Barrios finally filling into that weight. Andy, I know you're sneaking your way through that fight.
Yeah.
Barrios basically took it over about the 6th or 7th round, give or take, and dropped. Don't want to spoil it for you where you're at, but he dropped Ugas in the 12th round.
Yeah, I'm in the 11th.
Yeah, the eye could have stopped that fight at any point too. I think they didn't do him a service, but I thought Barrios looked he looked as good as he'd looked probably since the first 6 rounds of the Tank Davis fight. A good showing.
Yeah, I mean, he looked awful. Remember at the weigh-in for the Tank fight? Remember we were kind of laughing that both looked like they'd been on the meth for like the last 3 or 4 months. The way they were looking. Yeah, I agree. He's really filled in at this weight actually, and he's looking very solid about it. You mentioned the jab there. I mean, I'm in the 11th round, halfway through the 11th round here. I knew about the 12th round knockdown. I know he got a point deducted as well for spitting out the mouthpiece. So he's obviously done himself badly on the cards and that, but he's got a face like a bag of spanners here. He's got badly marked up. He's got the nose bleeding. He's got the right eye again. It badly swells up. You've got Stitch Duran using a bag of ice trying to get it to kind of go down. To me, he just looks like he's a over the hill fighter now. He's washed. I mean, he's mid-30s, longish career and that. But you got to give it to Barrios. I mean, his plan here has been absolutely spot on. Jab, right hand. He's picking his moments. He's no overcommitting. He's stepping back. He's going to be himself a bit more punching room, and he's basically making Ugas bite on every punch as this fight's kind of like wore on here. And you're right, after like the midway part of the fight, it's been nothing but Barrios. We mentioned the second round knockdown with the jab and that. It was like a shotgun going off, but it was a great shot. The way Ugas goes down, looks like the punch distances isn't the same. As I mentioned here, this is another beatdown he's been given here. Actually, 12-round beating. Face, as I mentioned there, badly swollen, blood everywhere. Even the doctors in there before the 11th round having a look at him. I really thought they were going to stop it there, actually, considering the state of the eye. Clearly fighting blind there in one eye. So, so fair play to Barrios. Bet underdog and that, but he's come out there on top. Don't know if it's going to be enough to get him a world title fight anytime soon anyway, but he's got
it's
himself
for the interim WBC title, Andy. He kind of won a title
Crawford,
in this
possibly.
Fight. Crawford's done at 147. He's all about legacy and big fish.
Oh, there you go. Then his chances he's going to get his full title at some point. But yeah, well, he's done well actually, because that kind of like wrote him off after the Tank fight. But and then obviously he's gone up in weight. And you're thinking to yourself, well, once a fighter does that,
Berman did him pretty well too. I mean, he won that, but the thing is, rounds.
When you got a fighter going up in weight, though, you sometimes think, oh well, he's blamed that loss on the weight. I'll just go up in weight. I can't be bothered trying to kind of like kill myself, try and get a wee bit of advantage. Now I'll just go up in weight because it's easier for me. But he's done well there actually. As I say, he's boxed that plan, and he's come through in the end. And as I say, look, you've got at the end of the 11th here actually, you've got you guys sitting in the corner, face bright red, the lips in that bright red. He's got blood everywhere, man. What a state he's in. This right eye and that as well. Just can't see out of it. So obviously he could easily been stopped. He had no chance of really winning the fight outside that knockout and that. So what was the point of him kind of like pushing on there for the last couple of rounds there? But
Yeah, no, it was pretty pointless, I thought. So not good for a guy who's almost 40. He's going to be 39 here in a month or two, I think they said. So probably the last we see of Yordenis Ugas, but he's got a win over Manny Pacquiao. You can always hang his hat on that one. Nothing to scoff at, as diminished as Pacquiao was. Now, Steve, as far as Barrios goes, the wise council of nutters put forth a few names that I thought would be interesting fights for him. I don't know that he wins any or all of them, but they're interesting. Those being Boots, Stanionis, and Jermell James, and all those possible under the PBC banner. I think that those are good fights from going forward. Like I said, I don't know if he wins them, but I think he competes, and I'll be interested to see how it turns out for him.
It's hard to know what they're going to do with him now. I know he won as you said, an interim version of the title or something. You'd have to think Boots and Stanionis would be too much for him. Jermell James has operated at a certain level. That would be a excuse me, a kind of 50-50 affair, I'd say, if they put them two together. But I don't know what James is at the moment, whether he's going to come back or not. Barrios started at 122, they were saying on the telecast last night. I don't know how on earth he ever made that kind of weight, but he definitely looks more comfortable carrying a bit. He's back with Bob Santos now. He left him after his 16th fight and linked up with Virgil Hunter. It was a bit of a strange move at the time. It never ever worked out, to be honest. Hunter's just on a string of L's at the moment, only since Andre Ward. It just, I don't know, he had Barrios a bit more face forward, whereas he's boxing off the jab now, using his skills and his fundamentals. But it's hard to know going forward how he's going to look against the better fighters, because unfortunately, poor old Ugas isn't one of those guys anymore. He's been a really good servant to the sport, but Ugas just needs to retire for me now. That's the second fight. He fought Spence about 15, 16 months ago. Got his eye absolutely busted up. Said he couldn't see out of it for 40 hours or something afterwards. Absolutely destroyed, swelled up. Again, eye busted up last night. He's going to end up with eye trouble in the future if he's not careful, detached retinas and stuff like that. And for what? He's finished at the highest level. He's, you said he's nearly 39. He's made good money. He's left Cuba. He's in Las Vegas. Got a wife and kids. He's absolutely finished at the highest level. Why campaign any lower than that when you've beaten Pacquiao, you fought Spence? At one point in his career, he had 4 losses, and he looked like he was on the way out. And the PBC, fair play, they stuck with him, came back, had that unfortunate fight with Sean Porter, where we thought he won, ended up causing the upset over Pacquiao, looked really good that night, got his big money fight against Spence, and then got another payday last night. He doesn't need to keep fighting anymore. There's nothing more they can do with him. He's made good money now. He needs to just hang up the gloves, I think, because he's got nothing left to offer at the top level other than getting battered by people and having his eyesight destroyed or not being able to see for his future. So I'll give a shout out to Ugas to retire. And as for Barrios, I think there was a right fight for him, the right style at the right time last night. Whether he'll do anything else against the better guys, I'm not sure, especially the 3 guys you mentioned. I think he'd struggle against at least 2 of them.
Can I just briefly say, Matty, I've just kind of caught up there with the 12th round knockdown, and it just kind of like maybe emphasises my point about being blind in that eye, because he's walked right onto a left hook. You've never seen it coming, walked right on it, got dropped there like a bag of shit. And then Steve says, obviously, I think it's the same eye he got done in against Spence. If he's having problems trying to look at it for like 2 days, as Steve mentioned, he's running a real risk of potentially going blind in the future. And that. This isn't pretty to look at.
No, I think that fight could have easily had the plug pulled in the 10th or 11th round.
Yeah, Matty, what about that comment on the screen from Wallaby King?
Got good word Barros was on some good shit last night, as in
Yale.
Colombian marching powder?
I'm not sure.
The Peruvian pure.
I don't know. Well,
all these faceless boxing channels. Get on the call. Show us who you are.
I wouldn't be that bothered by like seeing a bunch of people, fighting well on cocaine. We saw like the weed boxing. Why not have cocaine boxing where you got to do a line between rounds? That would be the kind of event that I think could bring in the viewers. Would you watch cocaine boxing, Steve?
See who had the first heart attack.
I barely got enough time to watch real boxing.
That's for misfits, though. That's what the misfits boxing should be. You should get Cali Sutherland as a fucking local dealer walking with a big, massive bing of ching, put it down there like in between rounds, as you say, Mike. Right, boys, have a sniff before each round, and the way you go.
They could do it in Thailand. Was it Thailand that's doing weed boxing, Matty? We were talking about the other day.
And I think maybe extend it to 5-minute rounds, since stamina might not be as much of an issue.
Yeah, and then you have a drugs test at the end, and if you test negative, then you get banned from the sport.
Yeah, no, we all have to be on the same playing field, Steve. We're not cheats in the cocaine boxing league. So, anyhow, meanwhile, back at the ranch, Wallaby King said, no, PEDs, not cocaine. Well, that's not as interesting. We'll find out. Yeah, if you tested positive for the fight, we'll probably know by Christmas, right, Steve?
Yeah, well, he wasn't on a Matchroom show, so the testing probably won't catch him. But yeah, we'll find out in 3 years' time once he's had a retrospective ban. Although you wouldn't know these days because being out of the ring for 3 years is pretty much par for the course.
Yeah, maybe that's what happened to Charlo. Maybe they just he's on a drugs ban, but they thought like he was like Michael Jordan. You can't admit he was gambling or anything. So just
in all seriousness, I'd say there's probably many cases going on in the sport at the moment where people have been out and it's because they've been inactive. That we think they've been inactive or can't get a fight or they're injured or whatever, and they've been serving a ban or something like that.
I wouldn't doubt that entirely. Such an interesting sport. If it's, you got to wonder, what would boxing quietly police itself? What I just don't know if
No,
we could ever.
we've got Matchroom doing in-house drug testing.
How could that go wrong? There could never be
Exactly.
any bias. They're
No,
there
of course not.
to protect the fighters, and that is all.
Everybody's against drugs in boxing. Everybody is. Nobody wants to see drugs in boxing until somebody gets popped. And then the first reaction is to rally round them, threaten everybody with lawsuits, try and get them off by the last minutiae that you can. And then back to the next thing. We're all against drugs again. We're against this. This is bad for the sport.
And try and destroy organisations while you're at it and that as well. Trying to kind of like flex the ego. Fuck up the entire sport.
Well, that's why if you just accept the idea that they're all on drugs, you're never disappointed. If they pop, it happens. If they don't pop, onwards we go. Sunrise, sunset.
As Frank Smith says, by the way, about the story about PDs, it's none of our business, right? Don't need to explain it to us plebs. You know, you get back in your box, you boxing nutters. You know,
we're nothing.
Just you sit down, shut up, and pay your money. I don't need to explain myself.
Joke's on them. We ain't paying no money.
Exactly.
Speak for yourselves, you lucky bastards.
Hey, you want a winner this week, Matty? No bitterness.
Hey, all right. But anyway,
50-1 undefeated.
The place, the place where we really won, though, gentlemen, was for those of us that got to watch the Elijah Garcia Armando Resendiz fight, which was an absolutely brutal war until the 8th round. When Resendiz went down after Garcia landed a great left-right to the body, then a right hook upstairs combination, flooring him. And then Tony Weeks stepping in when I think Resendiz was shockingly able to continue as many shots as he had taken. But hot damn, this is a great war through 8 rounds. I don't know what the young Elijah Garcia's ceiling is, but god damn it, Andy, this guy's going to be fun to watch while it happens.
Yeah, I mean, he was 19 at the time when he beat Amilcar Vidal, and it was a really impressive performance for a 19-year-old kid at the time. I was really impressed by him because Vidal was getting a wee bit of push in that. He had been getting prominent roles on Showtime, and he just got like taken apart. Really enjoyed the fight, I must admit. I know he's only 20-year-old, and obviously a wee bit of youthful exuberance and that. I like to see him maybe just kind of like stop kind of holding his feet too often, maybe just take a wee step back and look at what he's doing in that, because I just thought he just took punches there, or took some punches there last night he just didn't need to take.
Well, what I kind of saw, Andy, on that is it kind of seemed like what Resendiz was able to do was get inside and then kind of work him around until he had Garcia squared up, and Garcia didn't even know how he got that way.
Yeah, but then obviously he's staying in the pocket, but then he's getting his own shots off at the same time in that as well, or by way of response, and you could tell he was having the finishing word, especially in the kind of latter half of that fight. The right hook for, I think it was the first knockdown, I think it was brutal, and that was the end of it. A lot to like about the kid, and as I say, 20-year-old. What weight was that at again? Because obviously 20-year-old, he's still
160.
growing.
160. They're shooting to try to get him in a 160 belt.
Yeah, 68 will be his column point in the next couple of years, I'd imagine, once he completely fills out. But there's a lot to like, and plus with him being a southpaw and he can dig, it's going to be problematic. A wee bit like Opataya in that as well, who we'll get to. But a lot to like about the guy. As for his ceiling, we don't know at this point, obviously, and I didn't want to predict it just now, but he's certainly going to be in hell of a fun fights. And if it comes down to it, I think he'll be one of those kids in that as well. If he's in a war, he's going to go out in the shield in that as well. So it's interesting times. I think it should be quite fun times watching this kid as well. So definitely keep an eye on him.
I'll tell you what, Jose Benavidez moving up. I kind of think that fight's interesting at 160 pounds. I think that has fucking bloodbath written all over it. So yeah. But this you got to be careful, Steve, about taking so many shots to the head and the like. You might have a short shelf life, but there's plenty of time to improve for this kid. He can obviously bang a bit, but fights like this to open up a telecast, and this was a good one by Heyman. Great matchup here. Just total fireworks to kick it off. It kind of died out, obviously, with the Ramos Luben fight, but this was a good affair.
Yeah, I don't get much right these days, but I was saying, to be fair, the last few weeks in the lead up that this was going to be a great fight. I couldn't see anything else because both guys, very leaky defense. As Andy was saying, Elijah Garcia seems to enjoy taking shots, and against the best guys who can punch, that will come a cropper. He had a bit of struggle with Kevin Salgado, who stood off and used the jab and was a bit more negative. He couldn't break him down, but it's hard to look for faults now because this kid's done things the right way. As Andy mentioned, he stepped in to the Showtime to fight Vidal when it was a big puncher, very raw, but Elijah Garcia came from nowhere really and said, "Yeah, I'll take that." He was a father at 16 years of age. He's married the woman as well, and so he's done his responsibilities there, and he just seems very mature. He speaks very well for 19, 20 years of age, and in the ring, he's excitement personified. And it was never gonna not be a firework fight between these two guys. Resendiz has really improved since he lost to Marcos Hernandez. He hooked up with Manny Robles, he taught him a little bit of defense, I suppose, how to use his offense better against Jared Hurd, who's washed up really at this weight. Resendiz looked good. He's slimmed down. He was a bit podgy in the past. He's definitely taking things seriously. And they just went at it, the two of them. It was a fantastic war for as long as it lasted, and a really nice finish. The sort of right hook to the body, left hand, and then the right hook upstairs as well hurt him. And I will slightly take issue with the stoppage. I was the same as you at first. I'm not a Tony Weeks fan at all. I can't stand him. He does my head in. And I was ready to write it down. Trigger happy Weeks jumps in again. But I just watched the replay. And whenever he got up Resendiz, he sort of wobbled back into the ropes a bit, and they went back at it, caught a couple more shots. And the way his hips were sort of swaying and his head, he did look like he was hurt. I could actually, to be fair to Weeks, I'll give him his due this time. I could see why he jumped in. And I know it's no measure of a stoppage, but Resendiz wasn't really complaining that much. And I think on the balance of things, Weeks probably got this one right because Resendiz was going to get his head knocked off. And I love to see a good proper stoppage. So, yeah, Garcia, for as long as this ride lasts, it's going to be exciting.